South Korea calls it Dokdo. Japan calls it Takeshima. Whose island is it? Next on Global Pulse. A comparison of how broadcasters worldwide are covering this story. South Korea and Japan have been engaged in a cultural competition since World War II, when Korea ceased to be a colony of Japan. Recently, the ongoing sovereignty dispute over the island generated controversy in both countries, as Al Jazeera explains.
Defend Dokdo until we die is the message written on these protesters' headbands. The islands lie almost exactly between South Korea and Japan. South Korea calls them the Dokdos, Japan calls them Takeshima. A recently published Japanese teaching manual is at the centre of the storm. It allows students to be taught the islands belong to Japan. The islands themselves are small, steep and rocky, but under the sea it's believed there are oil and gas deposits and rich fishing grounds.
South Korea took extreme actions against Japan's claims. Korea's KBS News shows the government's suspicions, while Reuters shows it even got a little bloody.
A group of former South Korean elite soldiers slaughtered Japan's national bird outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul. The pheasants' smashed bodies were left to bleed out on Japanese flags, each one carrying a picture of Prime Minister Yasuo Fukuda.
Japan's intention is very clear. Japan wants to make the island one of the undesignated international dispute regions. Kim Sung-do, who is living in Dokdo as a fisherman, expresses anger against Japan's claim on Dokdo sovereignty again.
I've lived in Dokdo more than 30 years. What the hell are the Japanese talking about?
In contrast, Japan's government is approaching the issue calmly, as Japan's NHK News reports.
Each country has its own ego and perspective. I understand that. However, I don't believe an aggressive attitude is a good way for a country to express its concerns.
Why is South Korea so enraged? The tensions between Japan and Korea go back at least 100 years, as CBS News presents.
This is a blood feud, and it goes back almost a century. Korea was one of Japan's first conquests as Japan began building its imperial empire. Korea became a Japanese colony in 1910. It was a harsh, unforgiving military rule. During World War II, Koreans were turned into slave laborers and brought to Japan to keep factories humming as Japanese men were sent to the front.
South Korea isn't the only country fighting with Japan over territory. As Russia Today and Al Jazeera explain, Japan's quest for islands may stretch beyond expanding its country.
Taiwan's President Ma Ying-jeou has reasserted a claim to a chain of disputed islands in the East China Sea. On Monday, the Taiwanese Coast Guard sent ships to the area to protect a group of protesters defying warnings from Japan, which currently administers the islands. Their value has grown after the recent discovery of gas reserves there.
Relations between Russia and Japan have never been easy. And these are the rocks on which they split: Kunashir, Shikatan, Iturup and Habomai, making up the Kuril Islands. At the end of the Second World War, the Soviet army seized the islands and proclaimed them Soviet territory. Japan has wanted them back ever since.
The territorial disputes will continue. But let's hope that the violent confrontations don't play out in real life, as they have in the virtual world, as Channel News Asia found.
In the internet-based virtual world site Second Life, the Japanese were trying to take control of the islands using tanks. South Koreans fought back, but it was not an easy battle as the Japanese brought out their nuclear bombs to take charge. In the end, the South Koreans won, but the war is still far from over.
For Global Pulse, I'm Erin Coker.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only US network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.